Right, welcome back everyone. And today I'm joined by a friend of the channel, Alexander Adams. Welcome. Alexander Adams, of course, is artist, poet, art critic, and cultural commentator. Recently, with the help of others we will mention on the stream tonight, put together an event known as the Exhibition. Again, a topic for tonight's discussion. And I guess also, are you classed as a contributor at GB News still, Alexander Adams?
Hi, AI. Good to join you. Good to join everyone live in the chat. I've been a guest. I've been a guest on a few times. I've been invited into the studio a few times. I've done a few remote links. So I'm just sort of like I'm a general pundit, and I just sort of get the bat signal goes up every so often, and I join them. I haven't joined them recently. And no particular reason. I haven't been sort of refusing anything, but just haven't had the call recently.
No, I've noticed that with yourself and others, it's usually when Extinction Rebellion or Just Stop Oil usually go in and attack an art piece or deface a sculpture or something along those lines is when they tend to cover those stories.
Yeah, because if people don't know, I wrote a book. Well, I wrote two books that are depressingly pertinent and still pertinent. One of them was on iconoclasm, and the other one was on artivism, which is a combination of art and activism. So those are two separate books that I wrote, which mean that I have quite a good grounding in what the basis of these iconoclastic attacks and these sort of art stunts in museums is based in. So that's why I get the call.
That's right, yeah. And it's I mean, I guess I think last time on this channel we talked at length about what's gone on in the galleries, the various global NGO financiers who've basically spent immense time and effort, instead of dedicating their work to art to actually as you call it, artivism, to basically stifle and destroy beauty and creation and art that has a sense of a higher purpose.
Yes, so a lot of it, I mean, although ostensibly it's political, it's to do with sort of protesting the use of oil. It is essentially, it's driven by spite and malice and by a sense of inferiority and aggression, which they've been told is permissible to express through attacking great works of art, when of course they're not in the slightest bit creative themselves. And you have this very often in it's when I was researching the book on iconoclasm, you find that there are some people who are driven to attack things in museums, and they're very often failed artists. They're artists who have, of no great ability or originality, and they are motivated, I would say, more by personal inadequacy than by the political precepts that they espouse. Because I think often it's a post hoc rationalization. I think you do find this also in religion to a lesser extent, but you have people who are inclined to commit acts of extreme violence and murder and so forth, being drawn towards a religion which allows that as legitimate expression, to a degree, and that it's the predisposition that comes before the ideology, and it's the ideology that excuses and explains the dissatisfaction and the anger and justifies the violence and disallows things. So yeah, hi to Right Honourable Fez and Lady of Charlotte in the chat. Good to see you both. I'm fan of both of their comments, and met Right Honourable Fez in person.
Yeah, I mean, Right Honourable Fez and has been a long-standing friend of the channel, along with Lady Charlotte.
Yes.
And she's done Lady Lashotte's done some excellent work in Australia recently with the referendum out there.
Yeah.
And also I've just noticed I believe this is the same Matthew Full Mackenzie who is who I believe it's the same one. It'd be awkward if it wasn't. Who was featured at the exhibition.
Yes, I think that the one and only Matthew Full Mackenzie, known as Stoat on Twitter. So hi to him, hi to Matthew, and hi to all of you listening. And so the exhibition,
yeah. So the exhibition. So just could you if people who are watching who may have and I find it hard to believe because one thing I found was when Pharaoh first informed me about it. Once the news had got out that this event was being planned and it was going ahead and there was a venue, a date, and everything to it, there seemed to be like this real energy behind it that even in discords where because I have like a long list of discords I'm members of, and you have all sorts of topics that are discussed, and I was people were sort of discussing the exhibition, it's been more and that it was you would hear about it and people would be talking about it across a wide range of platforms in our circles. So it got out within our circles. And just could you give me the backstory to this? How did this come to be?
Well, thank you. I was really excited and gratified at how much online chatter there was and how much that actually translated into people coming to visit the exhibition in person. So this was a long-standing plan, and the main actors, I believe, were Matthew and Fen, and I think Pharaoh was giving a lot of advice on sort of marketing and setting it up, and then I came in, and so we were the four main organisers, along with Maven Politic of the Shieldings events. He was giving us some tips and giving us some good advice behind the scenes because, of course, he's organised events himself, quite notably the Witan, the now annual gathering of the clan. So there was the four of us organisers, and essentially the idea was we were saying basically, look, we've talked about this online. We need to do something in practice. We need to show that we're capable of organising something, that the art is worth seeing and that it's exciting, and that putting on an event like this will energise people, and it certainly did. So what happened was we had these, the four of us, including Pharaoh, who also makes art. He makes sculptures and tapestries, embroideries. I'm not quite sure of the distinction there, but anyway, so there were four of us who were contributing artists. And if anyone wants to follow along and find out what the actual artwork looked like, you can still go to the exhibition website, which is the-exhibition.co.uk. And so it was the four of us who I've already mentioned. And then we had an American artist called Harold Markram. We had Vladan Pajonovic, and we had Sam Wilde. People may know Sam because he is one of the illustrators and the chief cover artist for the Mallard. That's the website. So this was in discussion for the first half of, well, actually since the end of last year, and we were working towards this. We were saying, well, what sort of venue should we get? Where should it be? How big is it going to be? We settled on a venue in central London, and set up this website, which is really excellent way of seeing the work, finding out about the artists, and this was sort of like an alternative for those of us who were sort of unable to travel to London to see the exhibition. Oh, okay. So I'm being told that's the wrong site. Okay. Well, anyway, so this is maybe the legacy site. Maybe this is the wrong one. So if Matthew, if you could drop in the address, or if you, I'm not sure if you can spell it out, because I think links are sort of limited. So if you want to spell it out with a space that turns it into a non-link, and people will be able to sort of link it themselves, that would be good. But anyway, so this is these are examples of the works that were exhibited.
Fantastic.
Oh, sorry. And so I should say, yes. So this exhibition took place in central London in July, ran for little under a week, and got huge. We had two nights. So we had a press night, which was the first night, and then the second night was sort of friends and family, fans of the artists and so forth. And that second night was absolutely rammed, and it was so busy, and we had some real interesting people turning up, including Curtis Yarvin.
Yes.
Yeah,
the clear pill chap himself. So no, that, I mean, and I think what's quite interesting is that in our last stream, it sort of, I think towards the end of the stream, I sort of said, what hope is there for like dissident right, traditionalist artists out there, and you were sort of like none, or very little, and you had like a sort of, I don't want to say you were like channeling you're in the like Peter Hitchens Denethor, but it's quite nice because obviously between that time, you guys have effectively organised something which I know Pharaoh and many others, and Matthew and have been thinking of creating this. You can't operate within, as we discussed last time, like the Arts Council England. You can't operate within the establishment of the arts in the West, and so now you have to. This is like creating your rival castle in many ways.
Yes, so maybe you could interpret what I said as in we don't have any hope within the existing institutions or the existing funding organisations, because they are absolutely so hostile that they will absolutely choke us out, that there is no way that we're going to. I mean, you might get a piece or two into an open exhibition or something, but they're not going to open the doors to us as a group. It's going to be very difficult to get like a solo show for any of us. So in that sense, though, it's hopeless in that respect. But
yeah.
But there do seem to be more opportunities opening up. So we had this group exhibition which we set up, which was sort of self-funded, but there was also a very kind and generous backer who came in to support the cost of the exhibition, for which we're very grateful. But we have some alternatives now. So there are more people coming out who are putting money into the arts. It's happening a bit slowly. I wish it was happening a bit more and it was a bit more public. But we're having people who are buying the works direct from the artists. So some of that's going over Twitter, some of that's going on artists' individual websites. So, some of us have individual websites. And there's also sort of more talk about organizations to back this up. Private individuals who have some money who are willing to back up group exhibitions or private displays. So, so we are making some progress. And I'll mention my own progress simply because I'm the one you've got here. But so, for example, so if people go to Imperium Press, if you go to Imperium Press website and then you look up merchandise, what you'll do is you'll see my prints. So this is a recent project that was launched in the summer. Basically, me doing these lino cut portraits of writers, sort of dissident writers, mainly from the right, mainly from the conservative angle. And so, and because these have been selling really well, so I should mention some of the figures are Evola, Carlyle. You can see Gabriele de Annunzio on the screen, and that's the Italian novelist. Who else? Ernst Younger and so forth. Yeah. So if people go to that website, you'll see these lino cut prints, and you'll see that these are selling. Some of the editions have sold out, and because they're artists' original prints, they're not going to be reprinted. They can't be reprinted. Each one is numbered and signed, and that's the sort of way that people can back what we do by paying $50 for a print. Because I think that a lot of, a bit of a hurdle for people who want to back this sort of stuff is that they look at the prices of paintings and it's like, oh, starts at $500, starts at £700 and so forth. It's really tough to get into that, and also you feel a bit dubious about contacting people and doing money transfers and stuff. But if you've got a big site, an established site like Imperium, people, especially ones that people have already had dealings with, then you feel much more confident about putting money into, just buying a print and having it on your wall because you like it and you like the artist or the author, and it's also something that's going to go up in value. I think you can fairly confidently say that the works are going to go up in value.
Well, definitely, and I just brought it up here. Imperium Press. You
can
find if you go on Imperium Press, and it's under, I believe it's under merch, and it should be right there along with other. I mean, you can also get books as well, hardcovers, audio books. Yeah. It's a really good site. I've purchased many things from there. And I've quickly signed out of my account before doxing it online. And so here we go. So yeah, we got there's the Baron himself, castle, center of the earth, and all that. No, I mean it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yes, you can ride the tiger while staring into his profile. Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I didn't mean this to be sort of an advertisement for what I'm doing, but this is essentially one route to support dissident artists. We were a little bit, we didn't describe ourselves as dissident artists on the website when we issued our statement, and we didn't do that in any of the publicity. I think essentially because the art itself obviously has political connotations, but none of the art was expressly political. And we didn't want to alienate anyone by saying, oh, well, we are tied to a particular political creed. We have certain statements, but you can be sort of politically agnostic and still enjoy the work. And what we found was that we had people just coming in off the streets who didn't know anything about our background. They didn't have sort of any online presence, as it were, and that they were coming in and being excited by the work, and being excited enough to actually buy pictures off the walls because it was the sort of thing that appealed to them without any political baggage.
No, I mean it's probably sensible as well, because I mean let's be honest, political ideology is meaningless. I mean, I think if the last few years has taught us something, it really is just it's what comes after a victory. It's not what something that is can be used as a foundational route. I think I think what makes the exhibition a sort of game changer in many ways for yourselves is that unlike this is actually in person. Like all of this was an event. It happened, and it was actually people to come together in real life, not just online. Same with the Witan, same with many other events. And I think the fact that when it's real and grounded in reality, and there's it sort of moves it to another level. It's not just like on like this sort of metaverse online experience, that this is and so I think there's something that there's something sort of more sort of you know, like a proper foundation for a movement, you know.
Yeah, and I think from a very basic point of view, it adds to our credibility in that we are real people who really are artists. And hey, look, you can actually see, and to a degree, you can actually touch the work, and the presence of the work really changed things, because obviously Fender Villiers does these sculptures, and you can't really understand them without actually physically being there and moving around the sculptures. So that was, it's tremendous to have some sculpture there, and people were really blown away by Ferro's tapestries. That actually, the richness of the color and the detail, and you can't really see the detail until you're actually physically there, and you're able to get up close and so forth. And there's all sorts of artistry, the really strong colors of Matthew's paintings. There's gorgeous reds, and and the wonderful brushwork, and the skill that goes into it, that I think is often flattened when you see stuff in reproduction, and that goes for things that appear in books and catalogs and stuff, not just on a computer screen. So I think that once people actually saw the works, they were really excited, and also the chance to meet the artist and to meet friends, just to say to friends, oh, I'm going to go to the exhibition opening. Are you going to be there? Yeah, I'm going to be there. And you get a chance to meet people remotely, but you actually get to meet them in person, and you get to meet them at a big event. And it was a really exciting event. The gallery was packed out. People were standing outside. We had I'll say a few names. We had Nathan Hood, we had Apostolic Majesty, we had Maven, we had Panama Hat, all the artists. We had Right Honourable Fairs, and a whole Curtis Yarvin, and a whole bunch of other people whose names I probably shouldn't mention. So, and they were there, and it was really exciting, and it felt like a really big event. And just that on itself, in itself was tremendously heartening.
No, and I think, I've looked through the various works by yourself, by Pharaoh, by Matthew, who's in chat, and one thing that I think is, and maybe this isn't, it's sort of self-evident, doesn't need to be really noted, and probably why you didn't need to refer to yourself as like dissident reactionary artists on your website, but the work, all your works, it all sort of harkens to the Western canon, the civilizational canon that of our past, of our people, of our culture, of our history. And in many ways, it is I think it's probably the most genuine traditionalist sort of work, but that's sort of all come together that I know of. With, a lot of the people who I know who sort of like to do sort of traditional artwork, or maybe reference sort of religiosity, like Matthew has done, they'll sort of use AI art, and that's probably another discussion for another time, but I think that's probably what makes the sort of energy, because it is timeless. But there is something aesthetically real that modern art just can't, because it's all quotas, it's all, it's whether it's like a diversity quota, or some sort of political statement they want to tell, which was thought up in a boardroom in California by an NGO network. It's that there's no energy to that, but this is real, genuine energy.
Yeah, and so what you get is artists who are referring to classical antiquity. So you had so Harold and Vladan doing more classical themes, and some of Matthew's work was based on ancient myths, mythological paintings and mythological imagery. And so you can actually trace a line back to the classical art and even the art of antiquity. And also, I think you do get the feeling I got the impression that this is the sort of art that we would be making if there was no audience. We would be making this art even if no one was looking. This is the sort of art that we would have to make for ourselves. Whereas I think that when you look at a lot of the art which is done on the basis of diversity quotas and the art that we call state art, so it's basically supported by the Arts Council, by NGOs, by by the Turner Prize and so forth. That sort of art, you can imagine, probably wouldn't have existed unless there was someone there writing a check for it. Whereas I think with our stuff, you believe that, well, this guy or that guy, they would be making this work in their attic, as they were starving to death. Their last breath would be sort of, save the work. Even if there was no one, even if there were no buyers, if there was no public, they would be doing this because they're really passionate about it. And I think that passion comes through in the work.
Yeah, and my view on it is that most people are slaves to the power regime at the time, whatever that may be. And the reason why, the woke, what is collectively called the woke, and I don't like using the term too much, but just so we sort of, just for understanding of terms, as we they are in charge, and so the quality of artwork is its existence only purely, as you said, only sort of survives on the regime continuing. But in any sort of normal civilization, normal society, or normal time, no, it wouldn't.
Well, I would say yes. I mean, I think you're right. So we get the art that is funded and supported by the state. And if that state was a sort of a righteous state, and it was a nationalist state, and it was grounded in serving the people, I mean, the actual people, the majority population and so forth, then it would be a lot healthier. It would look like the art of the past. Obviously you had elites, and elite art serves the elite. Most of the art serves the elite, in terms of, that bishops and princes and millionaires, they're the people who commission portraits and works of art and so forth, and they obviously have an undue influence on the art, and that's only to be expected, and there's nothing particularly wrong with that. But in the past, the elites had more of a connection with the majority population. Now, of course, the state has vested interest in supporting minority groups, and so it will necessarily produce art that favors those and speaks in those terms and so forth. But and you're quite right that the majority of artists will serve power in whatever form that power takes. And I recently wrote, well, I think 6 months or 9 months ago, I wrote an article that said, "Are most artists ready to flip?" And I said, basically, if the regime flips to conservatism, nationalism, closed borders, indigenous culture, not celebrating migrants, not celebrating minorities of various types, then most artists would flip. They would go over to that regime, they would go over to that, or they would completely leave the fields, because they're not getting paid anymore to do their installations or their video art and so forth. And I said that, I think that it always was that most artists are followers in the way that most human beings are followers. They are group animals. And to a great degree, that's true. I'm also a group animal, but my group tends to be tends to be smaller, and it's more right wing, and it's more sort of socially conservative. So I'm a group animal too. I don't deny that. And so my article was basically, I think that most artists are ready to flip should circumstances change.
Yeah, and you know, from my point of view, I think um, for me, on a sort of, I don't want to sound Machiavellian as I say this, but for me, the reason why the exhibition is important is that we've seen, probably highlighted in recent weeks with what's been going on around the world and it being played out on the streets and society in this country and other Western countries, that there are so many people, so many, and when I say like the real British people, not the paper Brits, real British people have become so disconnected with their culture and their civilization that they will latch on to any and every other foreign cause whenever there's a crisis um, overseas, and as we have seen recently. And it has sort of brought home to me that the the amount of suppression, the amount of indoctrination that has gone to suppress the identity of and maybe I'll just draw back from British, but just English culture, English civilization, um, does make me think that we can't win. We can't win on the streets. We can't win at the ballot box at the moment. But one thing we can do, and if you look back at whether revivalist movements around the world, not just in the West, it does somewhat start with the revival, reconnecting with one's cultural and heritage past through art. And
Yeah,
what's got me
absolutely.
most excited for this event is that and it's not me telling you guys you better produce some Anglo-Saxon art right this moment, but it's I mean if you do, I wouldn't object to it. But if the fact that you're able to reconnect the classics, but you're able to have like a sort of perennial approach to this eternal approach to classical work, and actually has like some vitality to it. Going forward, I mean, this might be the, if you're people who are against the current regime, this might be the best avenue of fight back, because it's something that I don't think they can touch. I just don't think they can touch this.
It's yeah, I mean, because ultimately, of course, if you're making art that you really believe in, that this may ultimately come down to you're just doing drawings for yourself, and that you can't really share them, you can't exhibit them, so you just keep them to yourself. And this was true for sort of all sort of totalitarian regimes, that you've had artists who were working in secret. So yeah, but of course the art exists, but of course if no one sees it, does it really exist? If a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, has there been any sound? I mean, obviously, retrospectively, once these totalitarian regimes fall, you discover that there were all these sorts of artists who were working in ghettos or garrets, or doing work sort of at their office desk, and they were just sort of slipping the drawings in between the reports that they had to file and stuff. So the work exists, and it's very difficult to stop it. And people will ultimately, eventually, if it comes down to it, people will draw on the walls of their prison cells. I hope it doesn't come to that with us, but and there is also, of course, the internet, which is the ramifications of which we can't really see, because you wonder, well, if you were an artist in mid-century Germany or in the USSR, or if you were living through the Khmer Rouge regime in Cambodia, how would your art have fared if it had been able to leak out somehow, anonymously or internationally? But yeah, I mean, obviously, what happens is that we get locked out of galleries, we get locked out of all publicly funded art spaces. I worked as an enter museums. Now, I was kind of lucky enough to get some work into museums before essentially I was sort of unpersoned by the art establishment. So there are actually some pictures by me that are in museums in Britain. So I think if you go to the there's a website which covers all art in public ownership in the UK. I can't remember what it's called. I think it's Art UK or something. So if you go to that, you can actually search my name and you'll find out that I've got sort of about 3 or 4 paintings in permanent collections. But I look at some of the artists that I was with in the exhibition, and you think, well, some of this stuff is good enough to go into museums, but there's no way that a museum's going to collect anything by Matthew or Fenn at this stage. Was certainly not a British museum. You wonder, maybe I was going to say Poland, but of course Poland has recently fallen, so none of our work is going to be going into a Polish museum in the near future. So even the so-called based regimes are still, they're it's possible to get toppled or subverted. And in a way, you can kind of see, well, even if you're a Polish nationalist, why would you necessarily want a picture by Alexander Adams or Matthew Fall Mackenzie or Fen de Villiers? Why would you want any of that stuff in your art museum? Because part of nationalism is concentrating on what is made at home, made by your own people. So in a way, it would be kind of like, it's not reasonable to expect the right wingers or the conservatives or the reactionaries of Poland or Hungary to start buying the art of British artists.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking back on sort of a historical level, I guess it would have to happen. So, I mean, let's just say there was like a revival of like classical based art, which is traditionalist and heavily based in religiosity, and it was to like a pure like British Renaissance of that sort of art. I guess it would sort of then spread outwards to other European nations possibly as well.
Yeah, but you
wouldn't necessarily.
But of course, what it would probably do is it would take its own distinct forms, and you'd want that because localism is something to be devoutly wished for, because of course it reflects the character of the nation that produced it and which it serves. So if French religious art is necessarily probably going to be Catholic in character rather than the art that's made here, which is more likely to be Protestant or Anglican or so forth. So you would have a degree of localism, and you'd want that. You'd want something that was a counter to the international modernism or postmodernism, which is sort of essentially saying that if there are national characteristics, then these are just things that can be picked and chosen from, and you can mix them up. I always think of postmodernist art as kind of like as a dressing up box. So I know also postmodernism is kind of fundamentally opposed to the sort of the stable grand narratives of religion. So postmodernism and religiousness seem to be completely incompatible. So I would say that if you're right. If you had art that was nationalist in character or religious in character, it would tend to deviate and become individual in a sort of in a localist sense.
Yes. And sorry, so just going back to the exhibition, during if I understand this correctly, yourself and Pharaoh and Matthew and Fen and Sam sort of all agreed upon a set of principles that that would yourselves and maybe was it with other artists that would want to approach you, that I guess from my understanding, are these principles to keep away subversive elements from your from the exhibition, and future exhibitions, I should say?
Yeah. So what happened was, of course, we had this exhibition in July, and subsequently And obviously this was not all of the artists who we are in contact with. So in back channels, we're chatting to all sorts of people, including names that you might recognize and lots of names that you wouldn't recognize. And simply because of the limitations of the space, of time, of money to do with transporting work, we had to limit ourselves to a relatively few number of artists. And that was reflected in the exhibition. So what we did is we set out a series of principles. So what I can do is I can go down roughly through this set of principles, which if you go to, let me see, I'll read out the address. So so if you go to alexanderadamsart.wordpress.com, and you look down for July, if you go scroll down through the articles, and then you'll find in July there's something called a statement from the artists in the exhibition, and this was basically our statement of what we wanted to do and what we aspired to do, and it was also sort of roughly how we would conduct ourselves, because of course this refers to other artists as well. This also refers to artists who want to join us, because subsequently we've had some people contact us privately and say, oh, really interested in your group. How can we join your group? How can we get involved in future exhibitions? And we say basically, these are our core principles. Just follow us and we'll try and organize we're going to be organizing subsequent events. But also you go ahead and do your own events. This is a decentralized movement, so that you can set up your own events in your own country with your own set of friends. And if you follow these sorts of principles, you won't go too far wrong, because essentially if you look at the work, you'll see that there aren't particular styles. So some movements are based on style. So the Impressionists had a particular style, the Futurists had a certain style. So this is just like the plastic form of the work indicates what movement you're in. We're not like that. As people can see, there's different styles from different artists. So, okay, so shall I read out some of these principles?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, because that'd be quite interesting one to go through. To go through the principles.
Okay, so this is the statement that was issued in July. This was one that we all sort of basically signed up for. So we said number one, there is such a thing as beauty. It exists in what seems to us pleasing and correct. We are unafraid to use plain language to describe images and objects as beautiful or ugly, important or trite, art or not art. So basically, the postmodernist stance is that there's no such thing as beauty, because it's all subjective, and well, that's true to a degree, but we are not afraid to say that there is such a thing as beauty. Postmodernism would say that there is no such thing as beauty, but we are happy to say that there is, even though, of course, we might even have some internal arguments or debates about what exactly is beautiful and what is less beautiful. Go on to the next one. Two, we realize that art at the highest level can never be egalitarian or espouse egalitarianism. So this is basically us saying that we don't believe in equality, because if there is beauty and there is ugliness, then there is also correctness and incorrectness, good artists and bad artists, and so forth. And so we don't tie ourselves to the cult of equality or egalitarianism.
I said you can't go wrong with that core tenant at all.
Yes.
Cannot go wrong.
Yeah. So obviously that means that we accept that. Also, this is to do with individuality and individual qualities. So we accept that there are exceptional artists and exceptional people, and these individuals will have the quality of genius about them. Postmodernism, of course, tells you there's no such thing as genius. We're all essentially just products of our circumstances, and there's just privileged and less privileged, and that essentially we're all blank slates, which is, it's obviously nonsense. Just even if you think about your brothers and sisters, you know that there's a difference between your qualities and your abilities, and their tastes and your tastes, and their intelligence and your intelligence. And maybe that comparison is not even favorable to you. Maybe it's more favorable to your sibling. But these differences exist, and they are things that you're born with, and that you have to come to terms with. And denying that is nonsense. So 3.
No,
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just thinking it's almost like the sort of anti-great man sort of thought.
Absolutely. So I mean, this is one of the reasons why you have such animosity towards statues, and also, and to a lesser degree, paintings in museums. Of the old masters. There's a resentment of anyone seeming to be or actually being greater than anyone else because of their own personal achievements, because of their own personal character, because of their force of will. And we say there will be exceptional individuals, and it's right for them to be celebrated, and it's right for us to recognize that, and it's completely natural and normal. It's completely abnormal to say that everyone is essentially equal, and that we should have statues of the average person. Because I think that when you see figurative sculpture in public spaces now, you'll find that it's very, very often just an anonymous figure. It's just a migrant. It's just a mother. It's just a shop worker. And
NHS worker.
Yes. Yeah. Refugee. Just all refugees are completely equal. Yeah.
Rotherham taxi driver. Sorry, I'll stop now. I promise I won't be make jokes. But yeah, I mean, one good one to sort of watch is I think it was Oxford Union. This is like probably about a year ago now. They did the debates they have at Oxford Union, and it was on like the great man of history, great man theory, and you had obviously like the force and against, and the people who were for the great man of history, I don't think they really understood the sort of from the Carlylean point of view of what Carlyle was getting at. I think they said, like Napier was a great man, sort of stuff, and Gordon the Khartoum and Alexander the Great, or they were great men, as in the set they were great men. They were good to their soldiers. I don't think. I mean, yes, that's correct, but it's not. It's actually a bit more than that. And from the other side, that was sort of arguing all the way great men is, and there was this girl who she argued that well, what about the chef in Alexander the Great's army?
The one chef. There was only one chef for all his army. Yes.
For 40,000. Yeah.
Well, I think of course the problem is that it's a misunderstanding of the word great. Great means important, means significant. It doesn't necessarily mean good. You can have
Yeah, it doesn't mean
great.
Like,
you can have
great
on that
men.
Metric. Yeah, you can have great men who do evil things, who do great evil. Yeah.
Well, Alexander. On that metric, no, he sort of he just massacred an entire city in Greece, just for just because they may revolt or something. So it wasn't. On that metric, no. But I think what was amazing was that and I think it was actually David Starkey. He was the closest one that actually got to, and I think he understands the great man of history theory probably a bit better than the others there arguing for it. Is that he managed to get across, but what made the chef reach his pinnacle as he could be was that he was in Alexander's army. In any other circumstance, he'd just be a chef. But he was a chef in Alexander's army. And the great man, as Carlyle says, he is like the fountain of light, of energy, just coming together, and he elevates everything. Everyone and everything around him, he elevates it. And the same can be said for other figures as well. I would also say, no controversial and.
Oh, you seem to have dropped out. I should say that AI has had problems with his internet. He was telling me before the stream, and this seems to be one of his blip. Anyway, so I will continue and say yes. I think that people's potential is enhanced by serving a great man or a great cause. So that's definitely true, and I think it's also true in art. Still can't hear AI. Maybe he'll send me a private message. But now I've got control of his channel. I shall address the questions you want me to. No, I'm not going to. No, that would get him shut down. I can't speak like that. But yes, the idea of a great man is really important in art because, of course, it's the canon, and the canon is essentially. I've talked about this before. I think maybe even on this channel, that the canon is to do with not the greatest art that was ever made, but art that you must know in order to understand the history of art, not necessarily its evolution or its development, but to understand the core elements of style and ideas, that you have to have a canon. And it's just simply a way of remembering who did what, when they did it, who they served, what the subjects were, and what the impact was on what came afterwards. And that's why, of course, postmodernists and subversive elements like feminists hate the canon, because it's establishing a hierarchy, and they don't believe in hierarchy unless it's a hierarchy that they've invented themselves. The canon is interesting because it's an emergent hierarchy. Anyway, so that's a different subject. If you read my book, Culture War, I explain what the canon is there. Anyway, while AI is trying to join us, I will get back to the principles. So, number 3, art of power springs from a true and powerful vital essence found in many styles and techniques. We are aware that traditional forms and iconography can be parasitized and corrupted. It is this vital spark that should be respected and understood. Welcome back, AI.
Thank you. I don't know what happened. My insert is fine, but it just kicked me from the entire thing. So I think I mentioned too many spicy names in one go. So yeah, please continue. Am I still streaming to Twitter at all? Or is that is the stream still going?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I think we'll have to rely on chat to tell us that, because it's too many things for us to monitor, or at least me to.
Yeah,
maybe you can have a look.
Yeah.
Okay, so
yes, I am. Yeah, don't worry. I'm still. Everything's still there.
Okay. Yeah. So point 3 is basically saying that. Now, this is a controversial one because for our side, as it were, saying that traditional forms and iconography can be parasitized and corrupted. So a lot of people who are on our side, politically speaking, they're more conservative or reactionary or anti-progressive. They would say, we should go back to traditional forms, and there's certain big Twitter accounts that have huge followings simply by posting images of Michelangelo's sculpture and saying, what's stopping you? Well,
yeah,
it's possible to imitate Michelangelo. It's possible to imitate the Greeks or the neoclassical artists, but it's also possible for that art to be corrupted by different values and different intentions. So traditional art forms are not necessarily the path to core values. You have to rely on things having a vital essence, and of course that's hugely subjective. And people will say, well, who gets to be the arbiter of traditional essences? And I would say, well, the best artists do, the influencers do, the great men do. So there you are. That's my slam dunk. Number 4, we assert the primacy of aesthetics that embody values, and this can only be done through mastery of craft and understanding of materials. Art and message are indivisible. No verbal explanation is necessary because the art object contains everything needed. So this is basically us disavowing conceptual art. You'll find that there's some really great artists who are disposed like us, who work through the form of memes. I know artists, commentators like Geo would have a great time explaining how memes are a great way of demolishing the shibboleths of progressivism. And he's not wrong, but I would say in fine art, avoid the verbal, avoid walls of text, because even the best memes have the minimum amount of text. So, therefore, point 5, there is no single style or expression that is supreme. We shall incorporate whatever means and materials necessary. These may include new materials, old expressions, and yet to be discovered media, as long as they express the truths of human existence, struggle, imperfection, and the yearning for the transcendent. So this is basically saying we're not going to tie ourselves to a particular tradition, a particular set of materials. We're going to leave ourselves open to doing different things, even new things. And the work will be judged on its vital essence, on its character, on how competent and how exciting it is.
Okay.
Okay, just last 2. Yep, so last 2. So last 2 is number 6. We welcome others to join us. So this is me, talking about localism and people getting inspired to do their own thing, but we reserve the right to disassociate ourselves from any such group or individual antithetical to our aims. Both individual excellence and group solidarity are important and must be balanced. So earlier on, we were talking about the great men, about genius, about rejecting egalitarianism, but we also say, if there are people who are out to cause trouble, out to undermine the benefits that we all need and that we all welcome and that we all want for the artists who come after us, if they're basically troublemakers or people who wish us harm, then we reserve the right to kick them out, to exclude them, to denounce them. Luckily, that hasn't happened yet, but obviously, it's a possibility of it happening in the future. And last point.
So, like, just no low IQ thuggery sort of behaviour.
Well, I haven't met any low IQ thug artists, but there might be. But yeah, you're right. If people end up who we have accepted into our movement and into our sort of our circles, and then they do some low IQ stuff and they start saying stupid stuff, they make us look bad, they draw the wrong sort of attention, they don't act with good character, shall we say, then we reserve the right to kick them out, and we will have the final say on that. And there's a possibility that might happen to me, but I hope not. But it's always a possibility. And
No. I know. I think that is because ultimately you don't want to draw the in all your endeavours, you don't want to draw the eye of Sauron, because if one person draws it, it then comes crushing down on everyone else. And it's kind of I guess for your move, for what you guys are creating, and the artists that will come and follow and be part of your network and sharing ideas, and is that your responsibility is not just to yourself, but it's also to your fellow comrades in that endeavor, I guess.
Yeah. So obviously we've got to balance. We want great people. We want ambitious people, but obviously we're going to get opportunists who are going to try and join us. And to be fair, every movement has leaders and has followers, and there's nothing wrong with having followers who are perhaps less talented or less original, less committed. That happens, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because not all artists are going to be cut of from the same cloth. But obviously we don't want people who are just there because it becomes cool, that they just want to join the cool kids club. We need to be able to say, look, you're a dead weight. I don't think we would be saying that in a cruel way, or because, or because we're being bitchy, or because there are internal issues. But it may happen that you have someone who's just latching onto you and they're completely insincere, and you may have to cut them adrift. That's the way things go. And finally, we hold that, number 7, we hold that art serves mankind by showing heroism, bravery, nobility, and vigor. Artists should embody these aspirations as much as possible. Have courage and recognize that you may be called upon to suffer for these principles. It is an honor to serve. It is a privilege to be envied by those less able to. So essentially, yes, be brave. Stand up for yourself. Stand up for what you believe in. You may suffer for this, but I don't think that, anything worthwhile has been achieved without a degree of suffering, or without the potential for suffering. So if that means being cancelled, in the way that some artists and some writers have been, the vanguard, the pioneers, the leaders, the people who set down the early principles and forge progress, you may suffer, you may be cancelled, you may lose your jobs, you may be, you may be removed from social media, you may have your work removed from museum walls, and so forth. Well, I'm afraid that's part of it. That's part of your fate, and you have to accept your fate. Battle against it, but accept that this may happen to you. And once you've accepted that with equanimity, you can go forward.
Yes. It reminds me of a sort of army saying, how do you survive in the trenches? We have to accept that you're already dead. And then fear sort of passes through you. But no, I think what's good about your principles is that I think it makes it harder for anyone who does have sort of nefarious or even if they were, let's just say they weren't, edgelords, but just like subversive elements trying to come in and maybe even drag you lot back to the center, sort of like center normie, back to the establishment, which is sort of we've seen so many times with new things created to counteract what's been going on in the regime. I think this sort of guideline, I don't want to say rule, it's more like a guideline for someone to internalize. It helps them. It helps. Well, number helps you identify people who don't think in such terms. Because, I mean, ultimately, we need people to be thinking, on the egalitarian point. Everyone. If we're absolutely honest, everybody in most of the population and all the elites are egalitarian in nature, in all ways and thoughts. So you need people who think opposite to that. And I think that's a sort of the strength. It's almost like you're sort of withdrawing to create this I think in your post that you did about vanguardism, I mean this is the vanguard, isn't it, really?
Yeah. So I mean, essentially, yeah, this is there is a lot of risk, but there's also great rewards for early adopters. So as Lady of Shalott says, elitism, not egalitarianism. Yeah. So obviously, when you have those great risks, that's going to scare away a lot of risk. That's going to scare away risk-averse people, which is goodbye to them. That's no loss to us. But you're also going to get people who think, I'm going to gamble on this and see what I get out of it, rather than actually believing in, in beauty, and rejecting egalitarianism, rejecting pure materialism, and so forth. There will be people who will come in and try and join you because they think that they will be able to get a share of the rewards. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's the only thing on their mind, if it's their principal driving force, then they're obviously eventually they're going to come undone, and you're going to see them for who they are. You're going to see that they're opportunists, and they're just and they're followers, and they're parasites, and so forth. And there will be some of those, but I hope that the cost will be so high that you'll only have really committed people coming in right at the beginning. But as soon as, if there is a big change, if there is a sea change in, what happens in governments or institutions of stuff, you'll see suddenly a whole flood. And as I said, most artists are ready to flip, and they will come over automatically without ever, mentioning that they were previously sort of atheists or previously socialists or egalitarians and so forth. You just have to accept that that's the way things are.
Yes. And I mean, so looking forward, where do you see the exhibition? Because I mean, obviously, this is not this is just the start of it. Where do you see this going forward for you and for other for you in particular?
Well, there will be future events. So what happened was we had the exhibition, and it did very well, and we all basically had other things to do after that. So Matthew had his own thing to do. Fenn's got an exhibition coming up in Monaco, I believe. I was working on the prints, the prints for Imperium, and I had other projects on the go, and all of us, we all had other things to do, so we all kind of agreed that we would sort of go away and do our own solo stuff, and we would come back and organize for future events. And the idea is that we would be able to do this anywhere in the country, that we have we've got a system, we've got a good way of working. We could do this in different places around the country. Also, we could do it in different countries. We're not nationalist based. We're not sort of nationalist in ethic, even though we might be an outlook. So we're happy to exhibit abroad. For example, Fenn lives abroad. I used to live abroad. We've invited into Montenegro and an American artist to exhibit with us. So we're flexible about that sort of thing. So there will be future things. At the moment, we haven't sort of convened to discuss what next to do. But I would be really excited to see people taking up these principles and doing their own thing. We're excited to see if this kind of sparks anything in different countries. And we've been contacted by people abroad who want to do their own thing, or they want to join us, and we're sort of like, feel free to start your own thing, but we will be doing our own exhibitions in future. And what would be really nice is if we could have like an open exhibition. So maybe we've got a core of artists who have exhibited already in this group, but then we have like an open section where we have, we invite people in, or so we have some guest artists, and then we also have an open section where just anyone who is an artist can submit work, and we can sort of select the best of these and exhibit them. That would be my ideal, but I don't know what format we're going to be going on to do the next thing in.
No, and I guess my final sort of point, I sort of mentioned this earlier, because I don't want to keep you too long to this evening. I talked about a British revival and sort of focusing. If we focus down onto England, or even it doesn't have to be, it could be an English revival. Do you think through this, because obviously you're more in tune with what's going on in distant art circles now, you're very much sort of pretty much at the centre of it with your recent endeavours. Do you think that there is a space now for uh, re- like a revivalistic movement that can express an English identity, a real English identity, nothing, not like the AstroTurf nonsense that we've seen constantly, for decades now, but like a real the revivalist movement, even.
Yes, yeah, I think potentially there is, but it's not necessarily something that we're going to see so much publicly. It might be a question of individual artists working with individual patrons. So I would say, if people want to see that, I would say if you have money, commission a drawing, commission a painting, commission stained glass, commission a mural. I mean, obviously, it depends on how much money you've got, but I would say that is the best way of doing things. That if we have individual links formed between collectors or patrons and their artists, what you're going to see is that those artists are going to be able to recommend other artists, or those patrons are going to be able to, people are going to go to their houses and see that stained glass and say, oh, I want one of those too, or I want my own version of that, or, who's that artist? And you'll start to see these forming privately, because remember that the institutions are all captured. You're not going to see any of this in the Tate Gallery. You're not going to see it in the Whitechapel Gallery or the Hayward Gallery. You're not, you're not very likely to see it in the John Moore's open painting exhibition in Liverpool, which was previously quite a good way of keeping up to date with art. So a lot of this is going to be going on privately, and just today I sold a drawing, and it's really exciting when you get contacted by someone out of the blue and they're saying, I really like your work. I just want to buy this for myself. It's not going to be going on social media. It's not going to be, it's not necessarily going to be going on the website, on any website or anything. So this is something that's going to be happening at grassroots. Now, I know, of course, there's a degree of skepticism about grassroots, but if you've got these individual ties, it makes this such a revival relatively organic and relatively stable or sturdy, because it's not dependent on a government. It's not dependent on an institution. You don't have an NGO which is deciding, looking through a series of funding applications. I think that if you go small, if you go private, that is the way that you will see individual, a movement, an art movement coming about without control and without suppression. Now, what that movement would look like, what that art would look like, I don't know. I mean, it's quite possible you'd see, pre-Raphaelite style painting and symbolist painting and modernist painting as well, that would have distinctly English characteristics. And there might be several strands of this going on completely independently of each other. So you might get something that looks a bit confused or a bit weird, or you may find like a rise in religious painting, for example, or religious, sort of stained glass, whatever. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'd be very interested to see what the next developments are.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely feels that there is a reinvigoration, in the art scene, that's especially on the right, and we haven't, as I mentioned, we haven't got much on the right to be hopeful for, or it seems like recently every few months it's a one step forward, 20 back sort of thing, and as I say, I think with art, with culture, and even like poems, things like that. Poems. I mean, you got Columba, who's people might know from Apostolic Majesty's channel. I mean, he's been really going deep into poetry, and even something like that, it makes a difference. It makes a difference because it it has the power to influence influence the right people at the
Yeah.
end of the day.
Yeah, I would also say for fans of Columba, he wrote some poems related to our art at the exhibition. So he was sort of like he was the invisible artist, as it were, who was commenting on what was going on in the art. So he wrote some pieces especially related to particular works that were in the exhibition. And I would also say that people should go to Bournebrook magazine and go to the website, because there is a book called Sunken Island, which is a collection of new poems by new British poets that I edited and illustrated. So if you go there, you can actually buy one of the copies of new English poems or new British poems with respect to Columba, who's Scottish. And you can actually read some of the things that were written during the time of COVID and just coming out of COVID, and get a temperature for what new British poetry is looking like. So that also includes work by Panama Hat, so that's Benjamin Affer, myself, Columba, and a number of really talented and some quite established writers as well. So keep an eye open on that for sort of cross currents of poetry related to art.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think, is there anything else you wanted to add, Alexandra, at all?
No. Well, I mean, aside from Shilling, where people can find me, all I would say is thank you for inviting me on. It's been really great to talk to you again, and really enjoyed the feedback. Lots of really good comments, and I'm hoping that the Right Honourable Fez will be able to enjoy an exhibition by us in 2024. We don't have any particular plans yet, but that's on our to-do list. That's the number one on our to-do list.
Oh no, it's great for you to be on here, and I was going to say, yeah, when it comes to sort of promoting you, you got your Substack, Alexander Adams art .substack.com. You got your WordPress, which I haven't been able to access at all this evening.
Well, I would say yes. So the Substack is the best way of finding my main articles. So that's Alexander Adams art.substack.com. If you want to support me, you can become a paid member there. So you get to see exclusive content, and also the money goes to support me. And I would also recommend, if you want to support me also in another way directly, if you go to the Imperium Press website and you go to merchandise and you buy a print there, a goodly amount of that money that you spend comes to me directly. So that's hugely appreciated, and you get a chance to have one of your favorite authors on your wall, and sort of support me and support what I do.
I might just go over and get like a Evola and Carlisle one now. To be honest,
you have to be fast to get in the Carlisle. The Carlisles are down to the last couple. Okay, so you'll have to be fast. There might be some people listening who'll get in ahead of you, but yeah, we've got some. Got some Evolas, got some Denuncios, but the Carlisles are almost sold out. We do launch new prints every 3 months, and really looking forward to the set that's going to be launched on the 1st of January on New Year's Day. That's going to be exciting. There's going to be 3 new prints coming out, 3 new authors. So keep an eye open for that.
Okay, no, that's great. And I was going to say, people who are watching, earlier on the stream, I'll do the link in the description. But earlier on in the stream, we did go on the Imperium Press website, and so it's under merch, and it's the first subcategory under merch you'll find there. So
Yeah,
Yes.
they ship internationally. Lady of Shalott was asking in the chat. They ship internationally. I would say, you know, it's worth buying because once they're sold out, they're not going to be reprinted. And I can also tell you that the prices are going to go up because of the costs of printing and the special papers that we use. They've got more expensive. So the next set will be slightly more expensive. So if you do get in now, you'll be getting a good deal.
There you go. Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming, Alexander, and it's been great, chat from you. It's nice because it's so easily for myself, and I'm probably one of the most guilty of this. It's so easy that content wise to fall into like just sort of reacting to the chaos that's going on in the world, and and just
Yes.
getting all doom and then because yourself and others are have absolutely continuing to ride the tiger and but also like just exist on a different plane and produce art and actually have genuine success and wins from the exhibition and your works and I think that's what for my channel I that's something I've been thinking you have to sort of I think it's good for people on our side to have to no longer exist in the doom and the destruction and the ashes because it's it only drives us mad, I think.
Yes, it's part of the campaign of demoralization, which I think is deliberate. It's deliberately forced on us to detach us from the canon, from our history, from each other. So I would say, do follow all of the artists who are in the exhibition. They're all talented artists. So go to apparently it's the wrong website, but if you go to the website that we mentioned earlier, you'll be able to see those artists and you'll be able to search them down on social media. Some of them have their own websites. I know Fen de Villiers has his own website. Matthew Stote on Twitter or X is a good art follow. All of them are talented artists, so follow them as well. And you can follow me on Adams Artist at Twitter if you just want to know what I'm up to. So yeah, and there are some white pills are dispensed whenever you see some beautiful art that's being created by people who are sort of politically sympathetic or adjacent to us.
Yeah, I mean fundamentally the what and I think Academic Agent he did and like yourself before I go and you did a speech, an excellent speech at the Traditional British Group, their conference recently, along with other people in our circles, and that I think it was something Academic Agent said, where effectively the right it needs to embrace effectively transcendency, but also vitality and youth, because if it isn't, if it isn't moving in that direction, it's not moving and it's dying.
Yes, we can't be sort of backwardly focused. There are obviously things that we need to take from the past and things that were much better in the past and things that we need to continue. But the art of the past may not be replicable in today's environment. So it may be something that comes in a new form. So anyways, yes, please complete your thought.
I was just going to say, and that's the art of, and that is the key of perennial traditionalism. It's not the same as the past, but it rhymes with the past, and it informs the present and creates the future, and that for me is what that for me I think that's the core. If you want to be a traditionalist, that is that's a core tenet of belief. It has to be. Vitality has to be transcendent, and it has to be it can't be stagnant, because if it's stagnant, it's dying. You're permanently on defensive.
Well, I think that's the perfect summary.
I think that is. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you everyone in chat. Thank you, Lady Charlotte and Writable Affairs, and thank you, Alexander Adams. I'll be looking for future events and see what happens. But until then, check out everyone, the links that we mentioned, and have a good night, everyone.